Welcome everybody to Tips for a Challenge-Friendly Future. Thank you so much for joining us, and I know everyone's got a really busy schedule and we're kind of racing home from work or maybe getting the kids off to a hockey game, or I appreciate your time, and I'm going to really make it worth your while. So in the past, I've done webinars that are about an hour in length, and I know the last one I did was pretty lengthy. And I am going to try so hard to really condense it down into some real valuable pieces of information. But I'm going to try to keep it to about 30 or 45 minutes because I know keeping you for a full hour is sometimes really tough. So again, I would love you to just kind of grab a seat, grab a cup of tea, grab a notepad. If you are working on anything else, if you can maybe, I only ask if you can make sure that you've muted either your computer or muted your phone if you've logged in via the phone, just so that when you're typing and things like that, the rest of us are not hearing it or picking up the sound. So guys, I know that you're getting closer to the end of the challenge. That's why I couldn't be happier to be doing this webinar tonight about a challenge-friendly future, tips for a challenge-friendly future, because I love the challenge like a wrong crazy person. I think these are tools that are going to last you an absolute lifetime, and it's really the real kickstart to the rest of your life. And I can't be more excited for you in the next chapter, and that's really where the real work begins. And I know maybe you don't want to hear that because you think, oh my gosh, these past, last 7-8 weeks, they were tough. And I'm not saying they're not tough, they are. But what happens is that this is a real kickstart to the rest of your life. So this is really the teachings and kind of the reason why we set the challenge up to 8 weeks is that you can really make some tangible change in those 8 weeks. You might have noticed, obviously, some weight loss, if that's what you're hoping for. You might have noticed that your blood pressure levels are normalizing, your blood sugar levels are normalizing, you're having more energy, there's not as much inflammation in your body, your body is just starting to really fine-tune itself and start to work more efficiently, and really that's what the whole goal is. But sometimes what can happen is you do really well for the 8 weeks and it's like, now what? And that's really what we're going to talk about today, is the what afterwards. And that's where, again, the real work and wonderfulness begins, because this is a journey, and I don't want you to think your health starts and stops in 8 weeks. Your health starts and continues for 8 weeks and beyond. And really look at it as a journey, and try not to think that at the end of 8 weeks it just, it's all shutting down. It's like this is really the time frame to help really open up your mind to other ideas. There was an interesting quote that I was reading the other day, and it said that real transformation and change happens outside of your comfort zone. And I thought about that, and I thought that's really interesting, and it couldn't be more true. So when you are feeling that little bit of feeling uncomfortable or being kind of pushed past your limits, that's a good thing, guys. That's really where the change is going to happen, because I want this for you to be lifelong change. So that's really these tips that we're going to go over. I kind of highlighted 5 very broad, major key points to take away from the challenge. And if you can stick to this after the fact, I'm telling you it will be such an easier transition into regular lifestyle and just really make it be part of your day-to-day activity. So my very first big point, if you haven't already got this honed in over and over and over the time frame, is to stay away from added sugar. I wish I could count how many times I actually say that during the course of the challenge, because it's probably, oh gosh, I bet you we're up to into the thousands of stay away from the added sugar. So that's why I love that little quote. Eat less sugar, you're sweet enough already. Oh, yes, you are. So really, when we're looking from challenge-friendly lifestyle after the 8 weeks, that's such a key point, and I promise you, by being able to stabilize your blood sugar levels, even if you feel like you're starting to waver a little bit after the fact, if maybe you've had a couple treats here and there and you're like, oh, wow, I really need to pull it back, the one thing I always suggest is try really hard to stick with that key. So and is the no extra added sugar. So after the challenge, a lot of times challengers will come up with the question. I've got a couple of questions that came in by email before the webinar started, and one of the questions was, what about honey afterwards? What about maple syrup? The more natural type sweeteners. Now, I'm not going to say they're horrid, because they're not. They're natural sweeteners. One thing I would say is that be really leery of all of a sudden starting to implement them back in. If you are going to utilize a little bit, I'm talking about it is maybe a little bit in a baked good. It's not a little bit in a tea, and I'll give an example why. Is if you're having a challenge-friendly baked good, maybe you're having a challenge-friendly muffin or something like that. That's here and there. It's not a daily occurrence. It's not 3 times a day because you're having a herbal tea, which actually I need to take a drink. I've got this tea. It's a peppermint herbal tea. I don't know if you guys can see that, but anyways, it's from Tazo. It's really awesome. But it's good in the evening to kind of bring you down a little bit, and especially after you've had a really busy day. So it will help to kind of calm the nerves and help you get some good rest too. Okay, so when it does come down to the natural type sweeteners like the honeys and the maple syrup, the reason why I would suggest you not utilizing it in something like a tea is because now all of a sudden that little bit of honey that creeped into the herbal tea, the green tea, whatever, it just becomes more and more and more. So I really want you to stay leery of that. I hope, this is my goal, is that I hope you've enjoyed the food. We focus very, very hard on making the food be accessible and to taste really good. And there's kind of very different viewpoints on why we actually strategically kind of do that. Is that number one, if food tastes good, you're going to stick with it. So that's really what our entire goal is, to still make sure that you have a treat, to still make sure that you are able to make a muffin or cookie per se. That is what's going to help you stay as challenge-friendly as possible leading into the future. So we pick, you know, foods or recipes that are not only going to taste good, but that are going to satisfy you and still fall underneath of our guidelines. So that's why afterwards, if you've loved your breakfast, if you've loved your lunch, if you've loved your dinners and your treats and desserts, stick with that. So you keep having your exact same challenge-friendly food you would have been having before, or while you're on the challenge, afterwards, keep having it as well. But if you're going to have a treat that, you know, maybe a baked good that has some extra added honey and things like that in it, I would just keep it as low as possible. If after the fact, maybe you're a couple months after, if you notice that you're really starting to get that sweet tooth back, guys, remember at the very, very, very beginning of the challenge, we talked about your taste buds changing within 2 weeks. So taste buds change very quickly within 2 weeks, especially when you're coming off sugar. I hate to say this, but taste buds do change every 2 weeks. So if that means you've had 2 solid weeks of sugary desserts and sugary treats, and maybe you're going and getting those fancy $6 drinks at Starbucks with a lot of sugar syrup in them, your body weirdly starts to crave those extra added sugars again. So your sweet tooth can come back very, very quickly and with a vengeance. So my greatest point is to stay off of it. That is the easiest one. So if you are going to have a cheat and maybe you need to go have a chip that's not challenge friendly, usually you won't be addicted that fast. So stay off the sugar, guys. That's like, I can't be more honest with the fact. You will notice such a difference. Now, I was doing some research before the webinar, and I came across this image that I thought I would love you to see. And this is, not that I don't love Starbucks. As I'm sitting here with my Starbucks travel mug right now, I'm having my tea. But not all drinks are created equal. So say like for this particular drink, and I'm not just dissing the pumpkin spice latte because that's usually only over holidays like Christmas and Thanksgiving and things like that. But any of the lattes, like a caramel macchiato is what I was looking at before the webinar. And a caramel macchiato had 40 grams of sugar. And you go, well, I don't even know what 40 grams means. Like, what does that mean in real life terms? So I'm going to flip the next slide and then come back to this one. So 40 grams, how you're always going to determine how many teaspoons were added in was you take the gram number and you divide by 4. And by doing that, it will tell you how many teaspoons were added into that particular drink or that particular product or that food, whatever. So looking from that caramel macchiato perspective, if there's 40 grams of sugar, you divide by 4, and it will tell you that there was a crazy amount, 10 teaspoons, 10, not 1, 10 teaspoons of sugar added in. Now let's go back to that drink. So guys, it would be like you ordering a coffee and deciding you go over to the station where you put in your sugar and your cream and all that kind of great stuff. And you look and go, okay, you know what, let's rip open some sugar packages. And you rip in 1, you dump it in, you rip in 2, you dump it in, you rip it in 3, and you're like, oh gosh, I feel like that's way too much sugar, but whatever. That would be you ripping and pouring in 10 of those teaspoon packages. That's craziness. You would never do that. I would say no one, even when they're putting in a lot of sugar, when people have a lot of, you might go through the drive-thru and you hear people ordering a triple, and you go, oh my, they're adding 3 teaspoons of sugar into their coffee. I'm talking these specialty drinks or a lot of the sugary drinks that you don't realize there's so much sugar in it. That was 10 to be you driving up to the drive-thru and asking for a coffee with 10 sugars in it. You just wouldn't do it. So really think twice before you drink. And I think when looking at it from the sugar perspective, drinks is where a lot of times the sugar can creep in before you ever even coming close to realizing it. So you stay off those sugary drinks. Or when you are having one of these drinks, it's not to start your day off. That's another thing. I don't want you to go back and go, you know what, for my caramel macchiato and that's my breakfast. Don't look at it that way. I want you to look at it as dessert. So if you know that you're going out for tea with your girlfriends and you want to get yourself a specialty coffee or a specialty latte, then do it. Go right ahead. But do not for 1 second kid yourself. Know that you're having a treat. Know that you're having a dessert, and you would never, ever order it with another cookie or a muffin or anything like that. There was a post we were working on for another presentation, and we did like a day in a life of just like a typical Starbucks run through. And we did a caramel macchiato paired with a fruit explosion muffin. And the amount of added teaspoons, so again, added teaspoons was 26 added teaspoons of sugar with the caramel macchiato paired with the fruit explosion muffin. So guys, this is not your fault. This is just because we got used to thinking that that kind of food was a good way to start our day. So don't do that, especially after the challenge. You have rocked it for these last 7 weeks. I want you to keep rocking it into the rest of your future, and that's such an awesome way to kind of stay away from any of those addeds. Don't let them creep in, and if they are going to creep in, consider them desserts. You're having, whatever, but you're not going to be fooled. So that's my number 1 point. I like to kind of hone in on that quite a bit, and I know I spent quite a bit of time on it, but it's so dire important that I find once you kind of get that point, that's what will really, really, really help moving forward. Now, second point, hopefully you have done this during the course of the challenge. If you are going to a party or an event or what have you, and you're going over to someone's house party, bring a dish that you can have. And I'm not saying, you can't have their food as well. I mean, there could be really great options or really great choices. But a lot of times when you're having a party or going to a party, a lot of the food choices can be a lot of the fried spring rolls and fried food and pizza and wings and lots of cheese platters. Can I say that again? A lot of cheese platters. So usually what I like to do is make my own platters. That one in the center there is some goat cheese with some cherry tomatoes and some olives. You could even do like almost like a little bit of a bocconcini skewer with a bocconcini salad skewer with maybe some basil, some tomatoes, some bocconcini, drizzle a little bit of olive oil and balsamic vinegar over top on a skewer. And awesome, guys. It's going to look like you really put in some effort to bring to your, your hostess, your veggie tray or your treat tray, whatever it is. But really put some time into it. And the reason being is a lot of times things can go out the window when you're eating and drinking, and I would love if you're going to have some drinks, and not that I'm, saying you can't ever have drinks. Of course you are. I do too. But I always try so darn hard to stay awesome on my food, because sometimes when we are having excess amounts of drinks, all of a sudden the food seems like, woo, those the 18 spring rolls dipped in the sugar sauce seems like a really bang-on, awesome option, but the next morning, not so much, just saying. So bring something challenge-friendly, and you will be so in love and be loving the food anyway, so you just keep yourself going. Because remember, I want your taste buds to keep staying and wanting those particular types of good foods, high-fiber foods, whole foods, fruits and vegetables, with some lean protein in there, not so much of the refined sugars and things like that. So if you keep yourself honest and keep yourself, really be honest with yourself, I promise you, your taste buds will keep staying along this time frame, even with having a few cheats, which brings me into my next point. Stick to the 80-20 rule. So 80% of the time, God, if you want to be challenge friendly 100% of the time, you go right ahead. But I just mean, like, if you want to be a little bit more relaxed, 80% of the time, try very hard to do exactly what you've been doing. Really, you know, work on your food, work on your activity. It's like even during the week, and I really want you to look hard at that. Try to make sure that 80% of the week is challenge friendly rather than 80% of the day. And I'll give my reasonings why. I mean, there's been people that say, you know what, I love the 80-20 rule and I like to stick to it 80% of the time during the day. 20% is not so good. The reason why I love to say 80-20 rule for the entire week is when it comes down to the taste buds again. If you go back to the idea of having that caramel macchiato every single day with 10 teaspoons of sugar added in, and that's your treat every single day. Guys, something that you have every day is not a treat. That's a habit, and that's something it was told to me years ago by one of our kind of nutrition gurus that we follow. And I feel that's a really important key that I would love you to keep telling yourself. If there is something that you continually need, go back to time and time again, then that is definitely a habit. It's not a treat. A treat is really where, you know what, it's a Friday night and you're going out for dinner with your spouse and you're like, you know what, we are having this dessert and we are rocking that Milestones. No, it's not Milestones. Briar loves this something called Billy Miner pie, I think it's called, and I think it's from the Keg, and now I have to ask her. But I think it's like something that's, oh, so awesome and so worth it. Don't waste it on something that's not wonderful. If you bite into something, you're like, oh, man, that's not even good. Don't finish it. Waste it on something that you are going to enjoy, and you enjoy and have it and don't think twice about it. So really, I love the 80-20 for the entire week, not that you can't do it daily, but if you do an 80-20 once a week, your taste buds actually don't change like you would if you had it every single day. And I find that is like all of a sudden the cravings start to come back in. And I'm not talking, I'm talking from perspective. I'm talking from personal account stories here. I'm talking from the thousands of challengers that we've been with that give us constant feedback and what works for them. And we had another challenger, and I thought this was quite interesting as well. And I'm passing it along because I found it a very powerful tool. And again, you don't have to step into it right away. It's something that you can work towards. But one of our past challengers, what she did was kept everything in the house challenge friendly. So hopefully right now your pantry looks pretty good. Hopefully your refrigerator looks pretty good. I mean, if you have children and maybe they're veering a little bit, or a spouse and maybe they're veering a little bit, maybe it's not pristine. But what she loved to do is that everything she made within the house was challenge friendly. If they were going out and about, if they were at a friend's, maybe they were going out for dinner, the rule was a little bit more relaxed. And I thought that's kind of a neat way to look at it too. So when you're in the house, you're still making your challenge friendly cookies, you're still making a muffin challenge friendly, you're still making a challenge friendly dinner, making yourself a smoothie, all these things that you've gotten into the habit of doing. Awesome. Keep doing it. And then when you're out and about, then it can be a little bit more relaxed and you don't have to really think about it as much. On a different note, I don't have a slide for this, but I had a challenger yesterday teach me something that I thought, this is why I love our community more than life, because they share and we share and everyone shares with one another, and I do find that's how everybody grows. And anyway, so the challenger had said to me a really kind of cool tip. If you know that you're typically an overeater and you like really large portions, and when you're going out to a restaurant and you normally, you know, go hog wild and crazy, and a really great tip she had shared with me was that she asks for her takeout container when her meal comes. And I thought, what the heck? So you order your meal, and when the waiter or waitress is bringing your dish, your main course, she asks for her takeout container. She doesn't fill her takeout container right then, but she asks for her takeout container and she puts it off to the side. But it is just teaching her brain that she is not there to finish that entire big, huge, gigantic serving plate, which sometimes, guys, back in the day, our dishes, you know, would be about this big, maybe a little bit, I would say almost the size of our smaller plates. A lot of times when you're going out to restaurants, even in our own homes, for goodness sake, our dinner plates are they're chargers, they're gigantic, they are so big. It's like, oh my gosh, that whole big. No one needs that much food in that setting. It's like we're sitting down to a dinner out at a restaurant, and all of a sudden we're eating enough food to last us 4 days. So really, I thought that was a great tip. So when she's done her meal, when she knows she's eaten her correct portion sizes, she boxed the rest up for lunch the next day, and I think that's really awesome. And if you need to, again, it goes back to the idea of, this is kind of the next segue, is that when you are out and about, and when you're out with friends, and when you're going out for dinner, and you're having your, I guess you would say, more cheat night per se. How I said before, if you're going to be packing and making your trays when you're going over to friends' house and get-togethers and things like that. But I would love you to pick your cheats wisely. So if you are, I know you've heard me say it before, but I'm going to say it again because it's a very, very key point that, again, I promise you, from a maintenance perspective, guys, from real life practical changes. If you are going to eat, eat. If you are going to drink, drink. But goodness, guys, please, from experience, do not do it both at the same time, because if you do, I'm telling you, your portion sizes go crazy when you are maybe that whole log of cheese will be gone. I promise you, a box of crackers will be, I mean, you will demolish that in a second. And a half a thing of cake can go just like that, because all of a sudden the real inhibition has gone out the window because you've been drinking. So when you know drinks are going to be flying, I always say I would love you to choose in advance. Know what you're going to eat before you even get there, whether that be out for dinner. Take a look at their menu even beforehand. You can always email us, and we can take a look if you're unsure. But take a look beforehand, just so that you have a real kind of clear idea of what that restaurant has to offer before you get there, especially if you are in a little bit more of a transition phase, finishing the challenge to really trying to make it lifestyle change. I want you to keep trying to make those choices. So prepare yourself for success, and really by doing that, it's a little bit of planning, but planning that I promise will be so well worth it. So it's like, you know that you're going to be having drinks that night, look at the menu, go, you know what, I'm going to stick with that chicken dish with that side salad. I feel like I got a good idea what I'm getting, and then maybe you're picking your alcohol because that's what you had decided you were going to drink that night. So stay away from sugary mixes, guys. A lot of times in those big, huge sugary drinks, like a big, huge margarita, and don't get me wrong, who doesn't love a good margarita, but if you're going to be drinking all night long, these margaritas after margaritas after margaritas catches up with you, because in 3 margaritas, you've had your entire caloric intake for a day and a half. It's nuts. So it would be your sugar intake for 4 days in those 3 margaritas. It gets craziness. So try to stay away from the sugary drinks. If you're going to order, say, a vodka and soda water, a vodka and Perrier, get 2 limes squeezed in so you can really kind of cut the taste with the lime, and you'll get used to that. And what's interesting is that I used to be really all over the sugary drinks, like in love, because that's my sweet taste. I don't care about salty things. My husband loves salty things. He loves like steaks and chips and stuff like that. Like he craves like salt. Whereas with me, I would want treats. I would give up all food and just have treats. That's me. I love sugar. So for me, I really know my weaknesses. So I know if I fall off the wagon on the sugar bandwagon, how quickly your taste buds can want it, and then it's so much harder to really pull back off of it. So try to stay away from the sugary drinks. The vodka soda water is so awesome. If you like rum, tequila, whiskey, have it. Tequila actually is really great because 2 tequila shots and you'll be like dropped out on the table, won't even be able to walk. So that will be a great option for you. And then it will shut it down because now you're not going to be eating a whole heck of a lot because you had way too much to drink of your tequila shots. Now, also, a dry red wine is wonderful as well if you are looking for kind of the best of the worst options out there when it comes to alcohol. But I would say with your wine, be really cautious, guys, because I know I'm not a lover of wine. I would have vodka just because I like vodka. Briar likes wine. So in the end, just be really kind of overly cautious when you are having your wine because 1 glass of wine can turn into 3 bottles of wine really quickly. Same thing if you're having a vodka soda water. So they creep up and creep up and creep up. Another time I had a challenger tell me that, and I thought this was a really great idea as well, is that she did a glass of water or Perrier or soda water in between each alcoholic beverage. And I thought, that's interesting. So again, it's like just to pace yourself a little bit so that you're still being able to rehydrate yourself as well. That's kind of why I love the vodka soda water idea because I'm giving away all my tips, but you won't have a hangover if that's sometimes if you wake up with a hangover, you won't because you didn't have the sugar. A lot of times the hangover is from excessive amounts of sugar. So you won't have the sugar and you stayed hydrated all night because you had Perrier or soda water. So you're cool. You're not too shabby. You will be feeling great like $1 million that next morning and not dragging your butt. So that's when it comes to my suggestion on pick your cheats wisely. This next slide kind of just shows an idea of the different kind of comparisons in there as well. So again, looking at that very, very large glass of wine is comparable to having a donut. So again, guys, I don't want you to get hung up on it, but just try to pick the kind of the best of the worst out there, and staying away from the sugary drinks is really, really key. Now, my last kind of big tip is to don't stress out about it. Now, I can't even tell you how important this is because to really look at anything from long-term lifestyle goals, you need to make this consistent. It's not about perfection. It's about staying consistent. So if you go out and you whoop it up and you have such a great time, fantastic. That next morning, I want you to wake up and go, who cares? I had a bad night last night or a really great night, whichever way you want to look at it. And now it's time to get back on track. So start that next morning off the hop, even when your body is saying the last thing you want is a green smoothie and to go for a run or go for a workout. You're going to do it. Why? Because you whooped it up the night before and you enjoyed yourself. So you do it. Fantastic. But that next morning, you get right back on the wagon. And I think what ends up happening, and correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of times what I hear is that people can beat themselves up a little bit, and I had been known to do it too, guys. And this is not something that happens or that your brain can make this flip overnight, but it is something that I kind of have worked on. I would say very personally, I have worked on this for about the last 5 years, where back in the day, if I messed up and my night went nuts and my food was crazy and the drinks were even worse, that next day was a real kind of downward spiral where I wasn't able to pick myself up that quickly, and sometimes that downward spiral would last another day and another day. And that's really when you can kind of fall into a little bit of bad habits. So that's why when I say you get up that next morning and you start off that day right and let go of anything that happened beforehand, because it's that extra added stress, I promise you, that does nothing good for you. So a lot of times it's that negative connotation of going, why did I do that? I was doing so great and now I've blown it. And it goes into this really vicious cycle. It's from a psychological standpoint, it's called a positive feedback system, even though it's negative. So you feed yourself this negative thoughts and it kind of breeds to more negative thoughts and breeds to more negative thoughts, and all of a sudden we're in this like bottomless pit. We were just rocking the world, and all of a sudden we go, well, how in 7 days am I in this bottomless pit feeling like I've just messed up everything I've done for the last 8 weeks? So that's what I don't want you in. Tell yourself that if you were, and this is, I'm going to give this analogy. I give this analogy all the time, but I give it because I feel like this is really, really going to, I hope, create an aha moment for you. So if you were driving your car, and here you are on the highway, and okay, you're driving, and all of a sudden you hear a boop, 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 boop. You pull over to the side of the road, you get out of the car, and you look, and you've got a flat tire. And you go, oh my gosh, I got a flat tire, I can't believe it. Do you go back into your car, get, say, a sharp object, come back out and slash the other 3 tires just because you feel angry, upset, disappointed, late for your meeting, whatever it is? No, you would never do that. You might kick the car, you might go, oh, you might swear a little bit, but you would, you know, open up the trunk, you grab a jack, you change the tire, you call CAA, you do something, you change the tire. You get back in the car and you get driving. And I think what ends up happening is a lot of times when something doesn't necessarily go our way, we slash our tires. And it's weird, a thought process to think, why would we ever do that? But sometimes it's behavior, and it's learned behavior. And if we've been doing that for the last 10 years, 15 years, whatever, then sometimes it's just, there's the habit I'm talking about, the bad habits that, you know, kind of creep up on us, and all of a sudden it just becomes who we are. So really, when you wake up in the morning and you are dying and like, oh my gosh, maybe I want to go to McDonald's and get myself one of those, you know, vanilla milkshakes, which, by the way, can I just say, in those vanilla shakes, I'll have to go back and look at my notes. I don't even have it here. In those vanilla shakes, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there's 22 teaspoons of sugar added into the large. I think it was the large shake. It was the large vanilla shake, had 22 teaspoons of sugar. 22. That's craziness. That's you taking some, you know, cashew milk out of your refrigerator and taking 22 teaspoons and dumping it in. You would never do that. So that's where I really want you to know. Do not wake up that next morning after you maybe have a hangover, not feeling that great, and drive yourself down to McDonald's and get yourself a milkshake thinking you're going to help yourself. That sugar is going to do you in and set you down on that downward spiral. So, guys, it is supposed to be, you really do. You got one life. I've got one life. You've got one life. And I really want you to take full advantage of it. So beating ourselves up and kind of not being kind to our own selves, because I think sometimes our worst critics can be ourselves. So really, just I want you to kind of take a deep breath, look at the bigger picture and go, hey, you know what? I'm doing pretty great. And look at it from that perspective, just like this quote saying, it doesn't matter how slowly you're going, as long as you do not stop. I can't love that quote anymore, because it's, like I said earlier on in the webinar, it is about progression. It is not about perfection. So no one in life is perfect. If you were perfect, you're not growing. And I'm just going to say that outright, because if you think you're doing rock on and you are like, you are perfect and perfect and perfect, you're not, because you can always be doing something so much greater than what you're doing. So again, it's always in this constant flow and momentum. And when you're building up this momentum, that is some powerful energy, because no one gets in the way of a spinning wheel going down the side of a mountain. Nobody. It's like no one's going to stop that. It doesn't matter. You can't. So I want you to really try to build that momentum so that it's constantly, your body is constantly working for you instead of working against you, guys. Now, I know we've said this quite a bit. It's not a diet, it's a way of life. And really, that's exactly what we're looking at it from a perspective of, is try to create all these healthy habits that you have built into your repertoire, into your lifestyle over the last 8 weeks. Take them and build upon them, because what we want to utilize or help you to utilize is those are tools. It's like you've got a toolbox. So we build the toolbox, and in the end, the toolbox is something that you can dip into time to time when you're feeling like, oh, you know what, I'm sliding a little bit, I need to pull it back. But that toolbox will be really handy when you're moving forward in all of this, and keep tweaking and really get to know yourself And like I said before, it is about progression, and it's not about a beat yourself up. It is enjoy your life, live your life to the absolute fullest. You know we are always here for you. So if you need help or you're feeling like you're sliding a little bit, that's why I have our contact information up here. I need you to reach out, because the greatest way to get you back on the wagon if you've slid a little bit is for us to pick you up and put you right back on. So sometimes that's a really good tip, is just reach out, talk to us, let us help you through whatever it is that you're dealing with at that particular moment in time, and I promise you, it'll make all the change in the entire world moving forward into your challenge-friendly lifestyle. So guys, that's it. Mwah! Thank you so much for listening. And again, if there's any questions, concerns, or anything like that, please reach out to me. And I'm so excited for you guys for the rest of your challenge-friendly future. Thanks again for your time.